It began with a photograph that didn't even make the front page, a seemingly routine visit to a children's center in South London. And yet, if you look closely, that single moment might have quietly rewritten the entire future of the British monarchy. I'm not talking about a dramatic abdication or some explosive scandal. I'm talking about something far more subtle, and according to royal insiders, far more permanent. What if I told you the Princess of Wales has spent the last 2 years reshaping the institution from the inside out, and almost nobody noticed the blueprint until now? Stick with me, because the clues have been hiding in plain sight, and they directly impact what the crown will look like when Prince George eventually takes the throne. And if you want to stay ahead of stories that actually reshape the world, hit subscribe right now, because we're about to unravel the kind of quiet power move that future historians are going to write entire books about. Let's rewind to early 2023 when Catherine launched her Shaping Us campaign. On the surface, it looked like a very elegant, very royal initiative about early childhood development. Nice photos, soft lighting, a heartfelt speech. But here's the twist that royal analysts are now obsessing over. That campaign was never really about a short-term charity push. According to several well-sourced reports, it was the visible tip of a deeply buried strategy to reframe the monarchy's entire relationship with the public. Instead of focusing on pomp and pageantry, she was laser-focused on something fundamentally human, how a child's first 5 years shape the adult they become. Now that might sound like just a feel-good mission, but inside palace walls, it signaled a seismic shift. The Royal Foundation was suddenly prioritizing emotional intelligence over traditional protocol. And that opens a massive curiosity gap. Why would a future queen consort tie her legacy to the science of toddler brain development unless she was quietly building the scaffolding for a very different kind of royal family? Here's where we get the first real hit of satisfaction that makes everything click. Royal commentators have pointed out that Catherine wasn't just speaking to parents across the United Kingdom, she was speaking directly to the future king sitting at her own breakfast table. By championing empathetic, emotionally aware childhoods, she was effectively laying the psychological groundwork for how Prince George, Charlotte, and Louis would one day understand their roles. It's a clever, long-game move, and it solves a problem that has haunted the Windsor family for generations: emotionally distant monarchs who struggle to connect with regular people. Suddenly, the whole Shaping Us campaign reads less like a charity project and more like a silent constitutional renovation. But that satisfying realization immediately births a bigger question. If she's recoding the monarchy's emotional DNA, what happens to the centuries-old expectation of stiff upper lips and detached formality? The answer is already playing out in public, and it's so subtle you probably missed it during the last Trooping of the Color. During that event, traditional protocol says the royal children should behave like tiny, well-dressed statues, but cameras caught George and Louis exchanging little glances, reacting like actual siblings, not porcelain heirs. And Catherine's reaction wasn't a stern correction, it was a gentle, grounding touch on the shoulder. Child psychologists watching that footage probably cheered. What the princess appeared to be doing was modeling emotional regulation in real time in front of millions. That tiny moment, that micro-interaction, might end up being more historically significant than the entire parade because it broadcasts a new message. This family will rule by connection, not by distance. Yet just as you're absorbing that payoff, another layer peels back, and it involves the late Queen Elizabeth II in a way nobody expected. Sources close to the palace have suggested that before her passing, the late Queen had multiple private conversations with Catherine about the role of the monarchy in a rapidly modernizing Britain. Elizabeth, a master of institutional survival, reportedly saw in Kate a unique ability to bridge the gap between dusty tradition and the chaotic, hyper-connected world her great-grandchildren would inherit. It's alleged that the Queen quietly endorsed Catherine's deeper involvement in strategic, not just ceremonial, decisions. And now, look at the evidence. The Princess of Wales has gradually taken command of narrative-shaping projects, the annual Christmas Carol service at Westminster Abbey being a prime example. She designed it not as a royal spectacle, but as a community-focused gathering that thanked frontline workers, spotlighted mental health, and wove in personal stories of resilience. It looked like a festive concert, it functioned like a national therapy session, and it consistently pulled in higher approval ratings among younger demographics than any other royal engagement. That's not an accident. That's the quiet, data-backed rewiring of soft power. But just when you think you've cracked the code, here comes the most politically delicate layer of all. Observers are now asking whether Catherine has also begun to shift the monarchy's definition of duty. Historically, duty meant showing up, cutting ribbons, and never expressing a personal opinion. But according to a wave of media analysis, her version of duty is actively advocating for systemic change in areas like maternal mental health and the stigma around addiction, without directly entering the political arena. It's a tightrope walk that makes lawyers sweat. How do you push for social reform while remaining constitutionally neutral? Her method, apparently, is to champion the universal science and share deeply personal anecdotes. When she spoke about the overwhelming isolation of new motherhood, she wasn't reciting a press release. She was borrowing from her own life, and that vulnerability didn't weaken the crown's mystique, it supercharged its relevance. And this is where a little lighthearted honesty is required. I'm going to say what some of you are thinking. It's deeply ironic that one of the most rigid, rule-bound institutions on Earth is now being humanized by a woman who married into it, not out of it. The palace relied on protocol like a safety blanket for 1,000 years, and here comes Kate gently folding that blanket and putting it in the closet, replacing it with something far more modern: authenticity. Honestly, I find that kind of strategic softness genuinely refreshing, and I think it's exactly why the tabloids can't pin her down. They're hunting for drama, but she's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Now, let's address the giant unanswered question that loops us right back to the beginning. What does all of this mean for Prince George's reign, which could still be 40 or 50 years away? If Catherine has already embedded emotional literacy and mental wellness into the royal upbringing, then the future King George is being shaped with an entirely different operating system than his predecessors. Royal historians have whispered that this could radically alter the crown's relationship with subjects from one of obedient reverence to one of reciprocal trust. And yet, we're left with a delicious cliffhanger that nobody can resolve today. The monarchy is hereditary, which means the most crucial variable is completely uncontrollable. Will these early childhood interventions stick? Will a teenage George, shaped by empathy and openness, still choose to embody those values under the immense pressure of the throne? Catherine's blueprint is brilliant, but it depends entirely on the unpredictable alchemy of a human being growing up. That's the risk. That's the open loop that will keep historians, royal watchers, and skeptics glued to every subtle Windsor appearance for the next 2 decades. One photograph at a children's center may well have lit the fuse, but the explosion, if it comes, will be the quietest and most profound transformation the modern world has ever seen.